Hey, what's up, everyone? Lately I find that I've been really into symmetrical scales and kind of adding those atonal kind of sounds into my playing. So I thought I'd make a few videos. This is probably going to be a series of videos where I go over one scale in each video and just show you some ways that I like to approach learning these new scales. All right, so first of all, a symmetrical scale is basically just like any other musical scale, except all the notes within the scale are spaced equally, intervallically. So, for example, an asymmetrical scale would be, for instance, the major scale. So, if we analyze the major scale in whole steps and half steps, we get whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So, all the intervals are kind of unevenly placed in most scales. Now, an example of a symmetrical scale would be like the whole tone scale, which is the scale I'll be going over today. And if we start on E and play E whole tone, we have just whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step. So you get this kind of sound. So as a result, we end up with this kind of quirky sounding atonal kind of scale. And I say atonal because if you play through the scale, for instance, if you play the major scale, that note in particular sounds like home. It sounds like the root note. Now, as I play the whole tone scale, none of the notes really sound like home. It just kind of meanders around. Now, because these scales are very dissonant and kind of weird sounding by nature, a lot of composers like to use them typically when they're trying to build up tension. Like in film scores, you'll hear it a lot in films if there's a part where they're trying to build up a lot of tension to this one particular point in a film, they'll typically use these scales. Now that was just a cool little whole tone lick that I learned from one of my instructors back in MI. Now first I like to just view the scale horizontally on one string. So in this case, the scale is just all whole tone. So if we start on the E, we just go to the second fret, then the fourth fret, sixth, 8th, 10, 12. So it's just every other fret basically. And if you want to play F whole tone, it's just the same thing starting on F. Now the second way I like to reference it is also horizontally, but also across all the strings. So in this case, let's start on the note F sharp, which is second fret on the low E. So starting here, it would be just second fret, fourth fret, sixth fret. Then we go to the A string and move up one fret. And then you just play the same pattern. So in this case, it would be 3, 5, 7. And then you move up to the D string and one fret again. And at this point, you've reached the octave. This is also an F sharp, so you would just play the same exact pattern again. So, of course, because of the nature of guitar, that the G and the B notes are a major third apart rather than the perfect fourth, we have to go up 2 frets rather than just one. So in this version of scale, you get this. The last way I like to look at the scale is vertically across the string. So if we start on the fourth fret this time, we just go 4, 6, 8. And then next you go 5, 7. And then after that, you basically just repeat the same pattern on the D string. 4, 6, 8. And then on the G string, 5, 7. And then again, because of the guitar tuning, we have to go 5, 7 again on the B. And then 4, 6, 8 on the high E. So all together you get this. And that's pretty much all I use for the whole tone scale, because since it's symmetrical, it has a repeating pattern every 2 frets. So as long as you know that shape, you just take it up 2 frets. You just take it 2 frets at a time and you know it pretty much all over the neck. Now the next thing I like to do when learning these scales is to harmonize it and see what kind of chords I can get out of it. So in this scale, if you stack thirds like you normally do, you just get a bunch of augmented chords. Which aren't too terribly useful because they don't pop up in music, but every once in a while you might want to throw that into one of your songs. But if we look at the scale a little more closely, let's start on E. If we analyze the scale, we have the root, a second, major third, sharp 4, sharp 5, and a sharp 6 or a flat 7. If we take that information, we can see that we have a root, a major third, and a flat 7. Now those three notes, especially the major third and a flat 7, are the most important notes in the dominant scale. Now what that means is you could play the scale over pretty much any functioning dominant chord. So anytime you hear going to here, you could play that scale over this. This is where most improvisers use the scale, is over these 5 chords. Now of course the whole tone scale doesn't actually have a perfect fifth, which this case would be D if we're talking in terms of G. So if you really want to play a chord that suggests the whole tone sound, the whole tone scale actually has a sharp 5, so what you can do is just play a sharp 5. A G7 sharp 5. Or the scale also has a major 9, so you can just play a G9. And if you just take this G9 chord and just move it up 2 frets at a time, it sounds like the whole tone scale because all those notes exist within the whole tone scale. So pretty much whenever a dominant chord or any other proper chord like an augmented chord pops up, you could use the scale over it. So typically when people use a scale, they use it very momentarily. It's very rare that you'll actually write a whole song using a whole tone scale, which I guess it's possible, but typically you just don't really do that. Now just to give a practical example, if we take the piece Isn't She Lovely by Stevie Wonder, it goes A major 7, and then it goes G sharp 7 sharp 5, which is of course a whole tones chord, so you could play a whole tone scale over that chord. And that leads us to C sharp minor, to F sharp 7, to A major over B, and then ends on E major. So for example, you could play something like 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I did there is first I just played a little A major 7 lick. And then over the G sharp 7 sharp 5, I actually played the whole tone. First I just played the scale, and then I just played a little augmented arpeggio. And then that led me back to C sharp. So even in tunes like that, it's a cool little thing you could add to your solos if you want to play something really outside and really bring a lot of tension to the melody. So that's typically how these scales are used. You usually just inject a little bit of the sound into whatever you're playing or what you're writing, typically over a dominant 7 chord. Or even just looking at the scale, you can kind of just take random notes off the fretboard from the scale and just see what kind of chords you get. And you know, if you like the sound of any one of those, you can just add that to your chord progressions, and then you can just play the whole tone scale over that. Alright, that's going to be it for me. Hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for the other videos that I'm going to be doing on this topic. I'll probably do 3 more, one for augmented, diminished, and the tritone scale. But anyway, I hope you learned something new today. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and let me know in the comments what you think of the video, and I'll catch you later.